Entering the Pat Mayo Experience.
Pat Mayo Experience. Pat Mayo Experience. Pat Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by DraftKings, an exercise in futility. The 2022 NFL mock draft. No trades this year. We're going 1 through 32 to see how many we can get right. Is it going to be all 32? Probably not. But can you get 5 of them correct? Hell, even 3 of them correct. I want to see it down in the comment section. Give me your first 5 picks of this draft, and we're doing this from the perspective of what the teams are actually going to do. Not who you want them to take, what they're actually going to do on draft night. We'll see if, we're going to try to get, 12 of 32 correct. We'll see if you guys out there can get the first 3 or first 5, because, that's your best shot at doing it anyway. I want to see if anyone can do it. Sub to Mayo Media Network on YouTube. Subscribe to the Pat Mayo Experience audio podcast on Stitcher, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you do. Leave a rating and review while you're up there. Smash the like while you're here as well. Help us out in that regard. Help us rig the algorithm so this just shows up at places. If you're looking for the results of this mock draft, head on over to the description or dknation.com to find the entire list. If you're looking for time codes, we got those for you all the way down the list. And I think that's everything for me. Oh, no, we have 2 more draft shows from earlier in the week. Prospect Grades with Emery Hunt, Team Needs with Jeff Ratcliffe, and then more on Thursday as we talk about bets and more team needs with a bunch of absolute goobers who are homers and who they want to draft to their teams, and they're just going to have bad takes, and it'll be pretty funny. So this is the one that you want to watch to figure out the breakdowns, where people are going to go, because I got 2 of the best around. From NBC Edge, it is Thor Nystrom. How many mock drafts have you done already?
I think I've done 4. I'm working on number 5 right now. Maybe this is number 5 and the next one will be number 6, but it's good to be back, Pat. It's the best time of the year.
Don't be afraid to link this in your next mock draft, by the way. I can always use the extra hits. That always helps. Ray Garvin, where is the best place to tell everyone to find you these days? Is it over at your YouTube channel?
Yeah, the best place to tell them to find me is wake their ass up at 7 a.m. Central Time, YouTube channel, doing content over there. But excited for this, man. Love Thor. That's my brother now. We met, we broke bread, we hugged. So I'm excited to talk to you, Pat, and dive into this mock.
All right, so here's how the game works. If you're new to this year, I don't know shit about any of these prospects. I do know what the NFL teams need. I don't really care about college football. I care once they're in the NFL. Thor and Ray, they know the players. So they're going to argue. They're either going to agree or disagree. If they disagree, it comes down to me, guy who knows nothing, to make the decision on what the pick is going to be. First off, since we don't spend all of our time getting bogged down with quarterbacks, I want to assess that right off the top and try to figure out how these quarterbacks stack up with the quarterbacks that we've seen either last year or even the year before. Thor, you cracked me up when I was just randomly scrolling through my Twitter feed. I see from Thor Nystrom, I call Sam Howell, quote, the postman, because he telegraphs everything and he's not going to be working on Sundays. I'm guessing he's not too high up on your list if we were to redraft the last 3 years.
No, he's not at all. No, he's QB6 for me in this class. And if you shove the last 2 classes together, he would be number 11 for me.
Who would end up being number 1? Like, who's the highest guy from this class, and how would they stack up with the rest of them?
So QB1 for me clearly is Malik Willis. He's in a tier by himself. I would have him number 2 if you combine the last 2 classes behind Trevor Lawrence. After that, I'd have Justin Fields, Trey Lance. And then I see Corral and Zach Wilson as about analogous. And then Mac Jones 7, Desmond Ridder 8, Kenny Pickett 9, Carson Strong 10.
Ray, would you push back on that too much? Like, are you a secret Howell guy that we don't know about?
Nah, man, I don't think he's a bad player, but I'm with Thor. He's not at the top of the class for me. He's QB5 for me personally. Thor and I had a long conversation about Malik Willis, and I see the upside. I see the talent. For me, RPO Matt Corral is my quarterback 1 in this class. And if I were to stick him, in the 2021 class, I would much rather Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, Trey Lance over those guys. I agree. Him and Zach Wilson sort of in that same territory. I'm a little bit higher on Mac Jones for actual NFL purposes, maybe than Thor just by a hair. But Malik Willis, I do have him as quarterback 2 for me in this class. And it's not the gap between him and Corral. There is no gap. I just personally think what Matt Corral was able to do in the SEC, I trust that just a tad bit more, but I'm not going to push back a ton on Malik Willis and how high Thor views him.
Well, I guess the exercise that we're going to have to figure out now is, are you guys higher on Willis than maybe the NFL teams are? What do you get the sense? Because you guys can do your own rankings. You guys have watched the film. You guys can rate these players out. But Ray, when it comes to NFL GMs and what they see, it always seems like it's a bit of off the beaten path. Although even last year when we started talking through all the 5 quarterbacks that ended up going in the first round, I think we got the order right, even with Trey Lance going number 3 and not Mac Jones.
Yeah, this is tough because the fantasy space sees these guys as one thing, right? But the reality is if you don't have a quarterback in the NFL, you have no shot whatsoever. And as you look at the 32 teams, I mean, hell, I think maybe half of the league is solidified at quarterback. And then you've got everybody else trying to figure out what their direction is. So while we in the fantasy space, I think, are a lot lower on this quarterback class, I think come draft night, people will be shocked on how high some of these guys go because the NFL, they're constantly looking for these quarterbacks. Like if you have no quarterback, you have nothing. And the NFL has shown this ability, this propensity lately of bailing after a couple of years. If they don't see that the quarterback is panning out, they cut their losses and go on to the next. So I think we are going to see quite a few of these guys go maybe a little bit higher than we're projecting them to right now.
Is that what you're seeing at the same time, Thor, that maybe there's going to be, if one goes super early, and maybe that depends, and we'll figure that out when we do our mock draft, that if one goes very early or someone trades up to get one of these quarterbacks, that all of a sudden the floodgates could be open?
Yeah, I agree with Ray's take. Yeah, I think the NFL has been a bit cagey with this quarterback class. The talk around Malik Willis, it sort of reminds me of Trey Lance's process from last year when people were being eerily quiet about him. And then, you know, as far as Matt Corral, his pre-draft process didn't start until late because of that high ankle sprain. So there hasn't been a ton of chatter around him either. But I agree. I think the quarterbacks are going to get pulled up. I think there's going to be 3 to 4 in the first round.
All right. Well, let's get to the overall draft. Pick number 1 will go to the Jacksonville Jaguars. I doubt they're going to end up taking a quarterback because that would just be crazy talk after taking one at number 1 overall last year. They did go out in free agency. They picked up Christian Kirk. They solidified their offensive line, at least to a higher degree than where it was a year ago. Thor, we're going to start with you. What do you think that the Jags do with the first overall pick?
Yeah, after franchising Cam Robinson and signing Brandon Sheriff, I think the primary need now has shifted to the other side of the trenches. I think it's edge. Seems like this pick is down to Aidan Hutchinson and Travon Walker. There has been a lot of smoke for Travon Walker, but I'm sticking with Aidan Hutchinson here. First of all, he's the superior prospect. Number 2, I've heard that Aidan Hutchinson at least feels from the indications he's gotten from the Jaguars that he will be the first pick. So I'm going to go with Hutchinson first overall.
Ray, are you going to double down on that? Do you I know that maybe he doesn't pronounce it Thibodeaux, but I think that's just a much better way to do it because I think Thibodeaux is really the one that seems like he could still potentially go number 1. He could fall all the way down the draft board. I don't understand why there's so much confusion around him, but do you think it's going to be Hutchinson at number 1?
I think it is, and I don't. I have no damn clue, right? But I would think that Jacksonville, they're in a position where I think Hutch is the one. I don't know how excited they are about him at 1. I know they franchised Cam Robinson. There are some really good tackles in this class, and there are some really talented edge rushers. It just seems like a weird spot to pick at this year, but I agree with Thor. I do think Aidan Hutchinson should be the favorite to go to Jacksonville, and it fits a need for that defense.
All right, well, we'll stick with you. We got our first real difficult decision of this first mock draft. The Detroit Lions are at number 2. They could go quarterback here. I mean, the goof is still there. He's not the worst quarterback in the league, but I guess it really depends on whether the Lions see themselves as a quarterback away of being truly competitive. When you look at the rest of that division, the Packers are getting old. They still have Rodgers, but they seem weaker. Who knows, Thor, I hate to say it, with your Vikings and what they're up to. And the Bears, maybe Fields make the leap. Maybe there is a path here for the Lions to really accelerate their timeline if they can go get a game-changing quarterback. Or do they just continue to build up the Lions, get deeper at corner, build up those positions, and then try to find a quarterback to bring in once Jared Goff has run his course? What do you think that they do, Ray?
Yeah, this is where I truly believe the draft starts at 2 because a month ago, I would have said there's no doubt. They're taking Malik Willis at 2. And I do think that would be an excellent selection for Detroit. He's not forced to play right away. Goff is serviceable enough to where you don't have to force him onto the field. They have an excellent offensive line, good pass catching weapons. But I don't, Pat, this is where the damn exercise, I wish we got to trade, because I would trade down for Detroit and probably allow them to still have a chance to get Malik Willis. But I think they're going to go on the other side of the ball. I think they're going to go edge, and I think they're going to take the athletic freak Travon Walker, 6'5", 272-pound, just edge rusher, phenom, can play inside and outside. I think they're going to go Travon Walker, the D tackle out of Georgia.
So Travon Walker Thor could be mocked as high as 2, potentially as high as 1, or even all the way down to like the Giants at pick number 7. Do you think it's going to be Walker? Do you think it's going to be Willis? Or do you think it's going to be someone else?
I'm going to put you to your first decision of the day, Pat. I'm going to go with Malik Willis here. I don't know what the downside is for Detroit in taking Malik Willis. You've stunk for 30 years. You're going to pick another trench guy, kick the can again. Next year, you're going to win 7 or 8 games. So you're not going to be in a position to take a guy like Bryce Young or CJ Stroud or whatever. You got to crap or get off the pot at a certain point, and this is the guy to do it with. The tools are analogous to a Michael Vick, a right-handed Michael Vick. I think Willis would be the correct pick for them. And, again, people have been eerily silent about Malik Willis. Detroit has been eerily silent about their intentions. But I know that they asked to coach Malik Willis at the Senior Bowl. They got their wish. He dominated, and I know their offensive staff loves him.
To Thor, Pat, real quick, to Thor's point, I'll just say this really quick, and I won't say the names, but we were at the Senior Bowl, and I was talking to somebody from the Lions coaching staff that said, and I quote, "We're coaching a guy that if he lands with us, I can turn him into a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback." He didn't say the name, but Malik Willis was a part of that team, and that was verbatim the words from a coach from the Detroit Lions.
Okay, let me throw this out to both you guys, and Ray, we'll start with you. If Willis doesn't go here, when is the first quarterback selected?
If he doesn't go here, I think the first opportunity for a quarterback to be taken is 6. And I don't want to say that's where I would go, because that would be my pick here in this mock, but I think 6 would be where the first quarterback goes off the board. So
6 to Carolina, Thor, if a quarterback doesn't go number 2 to the Lions. Let's say both those teams pass on a QB. How far down into the first round before the quarterback goes down? Because if we take a quarterback right now in the mock draft, we probably have 5 going in the first round. If we don't pick one right here at number 2, and even if we pass on Carolina, which is a plausible situation, we might not see one until 15 with the Saints.
Well, I think Atlanta would very much be in play, especially if it's Malik Willis. Malik Willis grew up in the shadow of the Georgia Dome rooting for the Atlanta Falcons. I think that makes a lot of sense. They can't see Mariota as the long-term answer there. Another one would be Seattle at number 9. Obviously, Pete Carroll at this point knows that having the value of a dual threat quarterback, I think that would be another opportunity for him.
All right, I think we should make this mock draft fun. Go with Malik Willis at number 2 to the Detroit Lions, which puts the Houston Texans first of 2 picks in the first round at number 3. Thor, it is your case to be made now for the Houston Texans.
I'm going to go with Travon Walker here. For me, it would be between Travon Walker and Sauce Gardner. And there has been a lot of smoke recently about Sauce going to Houston. Both those guys are really good scheme fits for what Lovie Smith wants to do on defense. But I think if Walker falls to 3, I've heard enough interest with Houston with Walker that's what I'm going to go with.
Ray, this sounds like a pretty good lock for you to keep this rolling here at number 3.
Yeah, I like it. I would counter and say at 3, if they do believe in Davis Mills, they have Laramie Tunsil on one side. You have Evan Neal and Ekwonu on the board. You solidify that offensive line with one of these high-end tackle guard prospects. You're really surrounding Davis Mills with the tools to potentially see if he could be their franchise quarterback of the future. So while I love the talent of Walker, and I think it does fit a need for Houston, they need as much defensive talent as they can get. Do you really think that they could pass on Evan Neal or Ekwonu here at 3?
I guess it depends, because they pick at number 13 again in the first round. Is it more likely that there is a high-end edge rusher available at 13, or still one of the high-end offensive linemen? I think it comes down to that.
Yeah, and I think it's edge. There are some edge pass rushers that could be there at 13. Jermaine Johnson out of Florida State. There's no shot in hell Icky nor Evan Neal fall to 13, in my opinion.
All right, so I'm going to go with you on this one, Ray. Evan Neal has now been drafted 3rd overall to the Houston Texans. You're now back up on the clock for the New York Jets. This is always a fun time when the Jets get to pick.
Well, the Jets at 4, I think this is where things get really, really interesting. There's so much smoke, and I think the Jets have already telegraphed it. They want a wide receiver, Tyreek Hill, Deebo Samuel. There's all kind of rumors around wide receiver, which could be a possibility here at 4. But Thor just talked about Sauce Gardner having a lot of smoke and interest around the Texans at 3, having to deal with Stephon Diggs twice a year, Tyreek Hill twice a year, Jalen Waddle twice a year. I don't think the Jets will be able to pass on the talent, the size, the profile of Ahmad Sauce Gardner. So I'm going to go with Sauce here at 4 to the Jets.
Sauce at 4 seems to be, Thor, what I'm seeing a lot around anyone who just scribbles down on a piece of paper what these picks are going to be. Do you think this is one of the most obvious picks of the draft once you get here? Because the Jets are going to pick again in a few minutes in terms of when it gets to the actual draft, that maybe they can leverage that, trade back for more picks, get the receiver that they want. But shoring up corner right now does seem to be a priority for them, doesn't it?
It's what I would do. But my only question with it is we've seen some reports. I think Connor Hughes, the Jets beat reporter, he said emphatically that the Jets won't use 4 or 10 on a cornerback because, the idea being that Robert Saleh and his system he doesn't feel like he needs the freaky stud sort of cornerback that they can get if they have, the better players up front and stuff like that. So for that reason, Daniel Jeremiah did have Sauce Gardner, to be fair, but and he's pretty plugged in with the Jets. But I'm going to go with Connor, and I'm going to take Kayvon Thibodeaux instead and put you to another decision, Pat.
That was the other one I was in between, Thor. I didn't know if I wanted Thibodeaux or Sauce, man. I'm coin flipping that one, honestly. It's not Jameson Williams. I'll say that. I'm not doing that. I was struggling with Thibodeaux or Sauce here.
Totally. Yeah. And by the way, if it was me making the pick, I would take Sauce. It's just from them reports I've seen. That's why I'm going to go with the edge guy. But I agree with you. Like I've heard people say, the Jets might take the receiver at 4. That'd be too high. Yeah. I can't buy that. I don't either.
I'm not buying that either.
Yeah. Why would you lead the dance there when there's so little qualitative discrepancy between those guys? You know what I mean?
And 6 picks later, you can get your share of whomever the hell you like, whether that's Drake, Garrett, whomever, right?
Exactly.
Olave, whomever it is. Like you damn sure don't spend the 4th pick on a wide receiver who's coming off of an ACL tear. I'm not doing that.
I agree.
You guys are throwing way too many decisions at me for someone who doesn't know anything about this. All I've heard about Thibodeaux is that he has the potential highest upside of any of these edge guys. I think that if you're going to be in a division with a revamped offensive line in Miami, whether or not Tua is the real deal, probably not. But hey, we'll see how that ends up going. He has better protection this time around. But you do have Josh Allen in this division. Mac Jones looked pretty good last year. The biggest disruptor to any of that is going to be someone who gets pressure. So I will mock to the Jets at number 4 overall. Thibodeaux, which brings us to pick number 5, the New York Giants. Thor, it seems like they're already thinking about trading Kadarius Toney. Obviously, a brand new regime with the Giants right now. Are they just saying like, hey, whatever we have on our roster is not sticky. That can be blown up. We are starting over. And do you expect them to do that?
Yeah, the Kadarius Toney stuff is funny. Kadarius Toney's trash. I'm going to be really interested to see what trade package they get because I don't know what team would be offering a trade for a receiver that doesn't win downfield, who hasn't had any production in the NFL, and who has attitude problems. But I guess that's just me. The Giants would, outside of that stuff, they really need offensive line help. They had the worst offensive line in football last year. If you don't fix that, the offense ain't going to go one way or the other. We've heard a lot of reports that they prefer Ekwonu over Neal. So I think I would have gone this way even if Neal was still on the board. I'm going to take Ekwonu for New York.
Do you think that's going to be the case, Ray, where just the decision has been made for them? It came down to one of 2 guys and they get their pick of whoever's left?
Listen, with Dable at the helm, I'm expecting and anticipating competent moves by the Giants, and this should be as chalk as chalk. If Icky's on the board at 5 for the Giants, there's nothing else they should do. Receiver, edge, Ikem Ekwonu is the pick. I personally believe he's the most talented offensive lineman in this class. So this is a home run pick for the Giants.
So what is the gap drop-off, Ray, between the first two offensive linemen and everyone else who was left for the rest of the teams in the first round?
I mean, you got Charles Cross, who I like. I like Charles Cross playing in the SEC. There are a couple of other guys, but I think, Kenyon Green, he's not even in the category to me as a top 15 pick. Trevor Penning, good, but not up there. I think there's a big gap between Neal and Ekwonu and then the other guys. Charles Cross kind of in that tier 2 range, but I think those are the two top offensive linemen in this class.
What do you think, Thor? Is that like there's two, there's a gap, maybe a third, and then everyone else?
For me, there's a gap between, the first two guys and then Cross. I'm not quite as high on Cross as some others. You have seen smoke that maybe some people think he could go in the top 6, top 7, something like that. But for me, he's not on the same level as the other two guys. I do have him as offensive tackle 3. But there's a few things in his profile that I guess introduce a little bit of risk for me. Number one, we've seen Mike Leach, offensive linemen, coming out who've had problems acclimating to the NFL. It's a wonky air raid system where they get the ball out faster than any team in the nation when they're throwing it. And they also take these crazy wide splits. So the offensive tackle is like, in 10-2 when he lines up from the rest of them. Those are some of my Andre Dillard being the obvious example of one of those guys. So I think there's a little bit of a drop.
Okay, let's move to the Carolina Panthers at number 6. Ray, the first choice is up to you. If Willis was still here, would this pick be Willis?
I think so. If Willis was here, it would be the pick. Willis isn't here. No Thibodeaux, no Ikem, no Evan Neal. This is where, I think they would have to dive into the quarterback pool and say what you want about his profile, say what you want about the arm strength, the hand size. There's no way Carolina can sell that fan base or the players on that team going into the season with Sam Darnold. They can't do it. It's Kenny Pickett. A lot of people say he's the most pro-ready. You can plug and play. The upside is low. It's anything has to be better than Sam Darnold. And you just cannot sell those guys on Sam Darnold lining up under center another season, man. So I think they're forced into a pick here, and I do believe that pick would be Kenny Pickett.
Is there any other option that you can see, Thor, on the board for them? Do you continue to grow the offensive line? Can you trade back? Or does this have to be a quarterback if Willis is already gone or if Willis is already there?
I think they're going to try to trade back, unless there's one quarterback that is very clearly the number one guy on their board. But we've already heard reports that they're shopping the pick around, looking to move down. The supposition there being that they like Kenny Pickett, who of course used to be committed to Matt Rule to play at Temple, but they know that they can get him a little bit later, which I think is probably true. But in this exercise, not doing the trades, I think I'm going to side with Ray on this one and take Kenny Pickett for Carolina, just because it makes so much sense. Their shared history, between him and Matt Rule. The owner is a proud Pitt man or whatever.
Yep.
You got the whole thing there. It makes a lot of sense.
How much better does Pickett profile as a prospect than Sam Darnold did coming out of USC, Thor?
I don't think Pickett, he doesn't, for me, that I wouldn't grade him as high. That Darnold hasn't worked out, but at least Darnold has tools, as far as the arm and everything like that. My concern about Kenny Pickett, Ray was mentioning, I don't care about the hands either. That's not my concern with him. My concern with Kenny Pickett is he was at Pitt for 4 years. He was a 3+ year starter who did absolutely nothing those first 4 years. His 5th year, he comes back. And now all of a sudden he's good, but he had this awesome supporting cast around him, one of the best receiving cores in the nation, with one of the best receivers in the nation in Jordan Addison. They had 2 good receiving tight ends, 2 running backs, and then Pitt happened to get super duper lucky with their schedule. The ACC was way down. They didn't play anyone in the non-con, and then he opted out before the bowl game. I went and averaged out the SP Plus defensive rankings of their opponents this past year that Kenny Pickett played. The average ranking of them was number 88. So it was like they were playing like a Mountain West type schedule, at least as far as the Pitt offense against defenses. He was shredding a bunch of terrible defenses with a bunch of good players around him.
Do you have an alternative assessment, Ray?
Listen, man, you got to find somebody. Say what you want about Darnold. You see, there's a USC helmet over here. I used to attend a lot of games. I'm a USC homer. I was not as high on Sam Darnold. You look at his final season at USC, he was a turnover-prone machine, and I am just of the belief that it is very difficult for a leopard to change his spots. I saw it coming a mile away with Sam Darnold, so I was not high on him coming out of USC. He was supposed to play damn linebacker at USC, and then they changed him to quarterback. It's this weird spot, Pat, where they've got to try something. Like these Rule is coaching for his job. You've got a new owner in Carolina. You do have weapons. You paid Christian McCaffrey all this damn money. Like, they've got to find somebody to just get the ball out. All Kenny Pickett has to do is just be average. Just don't turn it over. Get it out quick. Be Mac Jones, right? Be even a little bit lesser version of Mac Jones, and that's a positive for the franchise. It is not a franchise moving pick. This is a really bad spot to be in. I agree with Thor. The optimal strategy for Carolina here would be to trade back, still get Kenny Pickett, and acquire some draft capital along the way.
But since we're not doing trades, that means Kenny Pickett is going to the Carolina Panthers at number 6. The Giants have the second of their 2 picks up and early. We've already gone offensive lineman for them, which means, Thor, does that necessarily mean it has to be the defensive side of the ball, or could they just continue with Dayball there now to double down on offense?
I think if they went tackle at 5, address the offensive line at 5, I do think it would be defense with the next one. They only got you only have so many names on that list when you're talking about the first 7 picks. They've done the math of, like, if we take this guy at 5, could Carolina take a different guy at 6, that sort of a thing. I think with the board the way it is now, what it would come down to for the Giants, their next biggest need outside offensive tackle, it's to get an edge guy. Preferably a pass rusher, but someone on the edge. The other thing would be safety. But would they take Kyle Hamilton at 7? I'm not sure about that. With Travon Walker falling here, I'm going to give Travon Walker to the Giants.
Yeah, you tried to give away Travon Walker a little bit earlier, Ray, so this seems like it would make a lot of sense if they do want to stick with an edge rusher.
It's funny because I forgot Walker hadn't been drafted, and the whole time I'm like, Jermaine Johnson. But Walker here at 7, this would, if they walk away with Icky and Travon Walker, that would be a phenomenal draft as far as prospects for the Giants. I'm not going to argue that selection at all. I just want to ask the question, Thor, with them trading away or wanting to trade away Kadarius Toney, a lot of people are saying receiver is in play at 7. Do you see that at all? Because I do think it's in play, not more than Walker, but I do think a receiver potentially is in play here at 7 for the Giants.
Agreed. Yeah. If the board does, and I agree with you in this scenario, this is just about ideal for the Giants. In this scenario, no, but I think there's other scenarios where it could play out. For instance, if there's not, let's say, we had 2 quarterbacks going in the top 6. Let's say that doesn't happen. And instead, teams are picking off the OT and the edge thing. That might change things a bit. Then they might have their wide receiver 1 on their board above Kyle Hamilton, the other guy that I was considering. So yeah, I think that would be in the thought process for sure.
Let's move down to number 8. The Atlanta Falcons have nobody at multiple positions, unless you're a big Marcus Mariota guy, but they have no receivers to speak of. Calvin Ridley is off, play some parlays somewhere. That's going to be tough for him. I mean, I'm doing the same thing, but I'm not giving up like $15 million a year to do it. In fact, if I had the $15 million and I was making parlays over and over, I'd probably be down $15 million at this point. But regardless, what do they do in terms of trying to project out this year, Ray? Is this just a write-off year? They get rid of Matt Ryan. Obviously, Calvin Ridley isn't there. You still have Pitts. That's great. You bring back Cordero Patterson. You have little pieces. But even Russell Gage is gone. Can they do enough in this draft to make them good this year? Or is it one of these situations where it's a lot like the Texans? Let's establish ourselves somewhere good, whether it's drafting the best corner in this draft to pair up with A.J. Tyrell, or do we go out and get an offensive lineman, a defensive lineman, shore up the trenches, and then next year, after we're bad again in 2022, now we can start inserting pieces that might give us some upside. Is this really a philosophy style of pick here where, there's every good receiver is on the board right now? Do they really need a receiver at this point when there's no one to throw them the ball?
Yeah, this for the way the board played out, I would have loved to see Malik Willis here, any one of these offensive linemen, but here we are. And I think it's still a little too early for Jermaine Johnson. They do need an edge, But again, no Russell Gage, no Calvin Ridley. They've got Olamide Zaccheaus, and I don't know whom else they have. I think they have to take a wide receiver here, and a lot of smoke around these Ohio State wideouts that they're going to go a lot higher than maybe some people anticipate. I think right here, Garrett Wilson is a phenomenal one-for-one replacement for Calvin Ridley. Even when he's reinstated, he's coming back at 28 years old, 27 years old, hadn't played football in over a year. I think it's a move that doesn't really help them this year because they have Marcus Mariota. But you get a Garrett Wilson here, or whomever your wide receiver one is, pair them with Kyle Pitts, get a quarterback upgrade next year, and I think you've got a shot to be okay as long as Tom Brady's not in the division. So for the sake of this exercise, I'm going to mock Garrett Wilson, wide receiver out of Ohio State, to the Atlanta Falcons.
Is Garrett Wilson your number one wide receiver that is probably going to end up being drafted, Thor?
So I have Drake London number one. Shout out to USC, Ray. But I mean, Garrett Wilson, those guys at the top there are pretty closely grouped. I think on most boards, some people might like one of them, particularly more than the other ones. But for me, qualitatively, they're pretty close. For me, it comes down to what your flavor is and what you need on your offense, because they all have disparate skill sets from each other. Even the Ohio State kids. So, you could go one way or the other, but I'm going to agree with Ray on this pick. They desperately need a wide receiver. And I also agree that there's a couple guys where if they fell down here, I think it might change the thought process a little bit. But those guys, it would be the three top edge guys who are all gone and Malik Willis, who is gone. So I think with those guys off the board, you're pretty comfortable going to wide receiver, your primary need. And we'll do Garrett Wilson.
All right. Yeah.
And he's not my one either. But I think Atlanta would take him because he most resembles a Calvin Ridley. And they already kind of have a big wide receiver in Kyle Pitts. But London, too, is my one.
Okay. Well, this makes life simple on me. Garrett Wilson, if this is the board as it is played out, and we get to pick number 8, and this is the best available option, what are the chances a wide receiver needy team trades into this pick, Ray?
With the depth of the class, and Thor just hit the nail on the head, it's just it's razor thin, and it's really unlike most. There is truly choose your flavor. You want the technician, you want the speed guy, you want the big-bodied guy, you want the small gadget. I mean, you got everything in this class. So I think 8 is a little high to trade up for receiver. I think once we get to the teens, that'd probably be a more realistic outcome.
Yeah. Do you see Atlanta potentially moving back from this pick, Thor?
I agree with Ray's assessment on that. I just, if you're a team, I don't know how you can get to the point where you have one of the receivers of that top, 5 group or top 4 group well ahead of the other ones, enough where you would, trade a future pick or trade some of your day 2 picks. I think this would be the year where you want to stay there, because it's not a class where it's like, Jamar Chase and Jalen Waddle and Devonta Smith. I think these guys are a step down from that. And you got a whole bunch of them. So, yeah, I think Atlanta might be stuck there.
So a team that's very much in the same circumstance as the Atlanta Falcons are the Seattle Seahawks. They just get rid of their longtime franchise quarterback. They got this pick when they traded Russell Wilson to the Broncos. So number 9 overall. This can go myriad ways, Thor. It could be a quarterback, if there are quarterbacks available, but right now it's not looking that way. And I doubt it at the same time. They'll probably just roll out Drew Lock, see how it goes. If not, Geno, who just re-signed, is probably going to get a few reps in as well. Is this just a spot to take the best player available at any position?
I think so, probably. Yeah, they might have, Malik way high up on their board. Certainly they're going to have the offensive tackles up very high on their board. If it falls this way, though, then we're going to look elsewhere. I think a great fit for them, and I think they would probably be thrilled if he was there, is Ahmad Sauce Gardner. I comp him to Richard Sherman, so it would be a pretty perfect fit. I think he would be very familiar to Seahawks fans, and at number 9, it's a great value.
Yeah, what are you thinking here, Ray? Best corner available is a great place to start this rebuild?
All right, corner, offensive line. The problem is, I agree with Thor. I still, for my taste, think it's a little high for Charles Cross. Sauce Gardner at this point, outside of Travon Walker going at 7 in this mock, that's just a steal, because I truly believe he's a top 3 talent in this class. So for Seattle, and what made Seattle special was that secondary, right? They do have Quandre Diggs. I know he got hurt, but he'll be back. You add Sauce Gardner to that. They still need pass rush. I considered that. but Sauce Gardner here, it would make too much sense not to take. You can't pass on them and give the Jets exactly what they wanted at 10. So I'm with Thor here with Sauce.
So the Jets are at number 10. They've already picked in our mock draft, at least, Thibodeaux at number 4 overall. Everyone's talking about a receiver to the Jets here. I understand it because I know who was actually on the Jets, but all they've done over the past 2 years is just funnel receivers into this offense. They go out and spend a huge amount of money on Corey Davis. They draft, what the hell is that guy's name? Oh yeah, Mimsy, who's terrible. Elijah Moore looked like he was actually going to be pretty good last year, got banged up, came back, and still looked pretty good. So maybe they found something there. Do they actually need a receiver, Ray?
I think they do, and I think they've telegraphed it. I think it's one of the worst kept secrets in the NFL that the Jets want speed. Robert Saleh wants speed. If they don't trade for Deebo Samuel some way, even though I'm not the biggest Zach Wilson fan, what I can appreciate with what the Jets are doing is they're giving him every opportunity to let them know if he is the guy or not. Like they're doing everything in their power to say, if you're going to be the guy, damn it, show us. And I think right here at 10, I'm going to mock the closest Tyreek Hill comparable player in this class. And I'm not saying he's Tyreek Hill because there is no next Tyreek Hill, but I think Jameson Williams would be the pick. If he's on the board at 10, I'm seeing some people think he can go as high as 4. I think that's asinine. But here at 10, I think Jameson Williams makes a lot of sense for what Zach Wilson likes to do. He wants to push the ball downfield. He wants to utilize that big arm, roll out, throw it deep. Jameson Williams, that's his great skill set. So I think Jameson Williams would be the pick. And to your point, Pat, I think they do need one and they do want one.
Thor, Jameson Williams, does that sound about right?
It does. Yeah. Everything that Ray said, I'm on the same page with. And I think if Jameson Williams was there, I think that would be the pick for them.
All right, so the Commanders are up next. They do trade for Carson Wentz during the offseason. That sounds like a whole lot of fun. I mean, if your goal is to lose in the first round, what a trade for you. So another receiver? Because, I mean, they would have been a primo team, especially with that draft capital that they gave up. They could have packaged this pick with another pick, traded up for a cheap quarterback who's way better than Carson Wentz. I don't quite understand what they're doing. Now, there's actually rumors that Terry McLaurin could be on the trading block as well, which is just asinine. Why get rid of, like, the one really good player that you have on, not the one really good player, but the best receiver by far that you have on your roster. Is this a spot for another receiver and starting a run here, Thor? Or is it Kyle Hamilton time finally? Go take the best safety out there.
I do think this is going to be another receiver. Yeah. Ray was talking about how the Jets have telegraphed that they're going to take a receiver in the top 10, and they most certainly have. Washington's been telegraphing that they're going to be taking a receiver here. So, barring something crazy in the way that the board is now, I'm going to be going receiver for them. I think a good fit for Washington as far as the receivers left would be Drake London. Carson Wentz, you can certainly push the ball down the field, might have some accuracy issues. Well, Drake London has the catch radius of an Indian god. You get it anywhere close to him, he's coming down with that ball. I think it's a great fit, and it certainly helps them out, whether McLaren comes back or not. Even if McLaren comes back, you still desperately need the receiver because you need the opposite boundary guy opposite him. And then, of course, you have Samuel in the slot. But if they trade McLaren, then all of a sudden they have the worst receiving core in the league with the Packers. So I think Drake London would be a good fit.
Are you thinking USC guy Drake London, right?
I think it would be the pick. I don't like it for Drake London, but that would be the pick for Washington. And as Thor said, and it's not just it's Curtis Samuel. It looks like a bust, right? Logan Thomas isn't all the way healthy. It's truly just McLaurin out there. And Carson Wentz did find success with Michael Pittman Jr. last year, another big-bodied wide receiver. And YOLO Wentz just what I appreciate about him, he will give the guy a chance because he will just chuck it deep and pray for the best. Drake London, you get it in his area code and he's catching it. So I like the pick for Washington, hate the spot for London.
All right, so it's going to be Drake London to the Washington Commanders. And Ray, we're going to give you first shot at the Minnesota Vikings at number 12. And we'll let Thor stew for a little bit here. And he doesn't want the people of Minnesota, tracking him down on the streets in case he messes this up for him. What are they doing here? Because it seems like year after year, they're just a Band-Aid team where we know they're good. They have good players, but they're not great. So where are they really going with the team that they have? Is there anyone they can add right now in the draft to actually get them up a level in terms of being a competitive team?
It's funny. I'm seeing a lot of mocks with quarterback, like the Vikings taking a quarterback at 12. I don't think that's happening at 12. I think they need secondary help. They tried to bring in a guy from LSU, Patrick Peterson, and he's older. He's past his prime. And we got a young kid who tested like a freak. I know he didn't play this past season, but going into the season, he was regarded as the best cornerback in the class. I still think he's very talented, even though he doesn't really have an interest in stopping the run. But at 12, I think Derek Stingley makes sense for Minnesota right here, getting a cornerback on that defense, helping solidify that. They need one desperately, man. They need a cornerback in the worst way. Harrison Smith towards the back end of his career, but still serviceable. Get Derek Stingley there. It definitely helps out that secondary. So I'm going to go Derek Stingley Jr., cornerback out of LSU.
What does your heart tell you, Thor? Do you think they just replace Harrison Smith, like next Notre Dame guy up, or are they going to go to a corner, you think?
Well, I'm the internet's most known Stingley hater, so I'm not agreeing with Ray on this one, even though it does make a ton of sense. Of course, like that, if you look around in mock drafts, Stingley's going in like 90% of the mock drafts to the Vikings. It's one of those things that almost makes too much sense to actually happen. Yeah. They had the defense, the Vikings brought in the defensive coordinator from LSU last year and the defensive back coach to be their defensive back coach this year. The supposition there is like that guy's going to be advocating for Stingley. I don't know. I mean, Stingley, he didn't play well the year before. Last year he was injured. Some people think he checked out on his team. He hasn't been good since 2019 when he was a true freshman playing for one of the great teams of all time in college football. So for me, that would not be my pick. And I'm going to put you to a decision here, Pat. I think the slam dunk pick here, and I agree with Ray, you absolutely have to address the secondary here. It's by far the biggest problem with Minnesota. I'm going to be taking Kyle Hamilton. That's a guy that I think is going to be a superstar in the NFL. If he's going to fall down the board, and that's, the indications that we've been getting, a guy that we used to see or think was going to be a top 5 or 6 type lock, looks like he's going to fall out of the top 10. The Vikings in this scenario get a gift from the NFL. You got to take it.
I think I'm going to side with you here. Harrison Smith is getting older. I enjoy just a great narrative and like what a fit Kyle Hamilton on the Minnesota Vikings. So I'm going to side with Thor on this one at number 12 to the Minnesota Vikings. Tapped in to that Viking scene being in Minnesota. So we'll go with Kyle.
Just give me the Cowboys. Just give me the Cowboys, Pat. When we get to Dallas, just give them to me, damn it.
Ray, you can't spoil what I'm going to do, but that's what I'm going to do. I wouldn't take that away from you. You're plugged in. You're on the scene. Don't you?
I think I do.
Well, we'll see if you do or not. So Kyle Hamilton to the Minnesota Vikings. The Texans have their second pick at number 13. We already have them going offensive lineman at number 3. Thor, this one is your pick. It is an odd number pick. So what are the Texans doing now?
So the Texans haven't gone tackle first. They desperately need to help out that defensive front. They need edge, but they also needed a defensive tackle. Last year, 60% of the snaps went to their round 6 pick, Roy Lopez. He didn't do much with them. And then, of course, they have the second round bust, Ross Blacklock there too. They need to help out, whether it's at edge, whether it's the defensive tackle. I would expect one of these first 2 picks at least to be on those positions. I'm going to take Jordan Davis from Georgia. He would fill an enormous need there. He's going to help out your run defense a whole lot. I think he's a guy that Lovie Smith might be attracted to.
I think you kind of hit on the key name there. I mean, we have the one franchise with the Texans. Do they know what they're doing? Who knows? But Lovie Smith, Ray, taking a run-stopping defensive lineman at number 13, doesn't that seem right up their alley?
Jordan Davis, Jermaine Johnson make a ton of sense. The only other thing that I could see them doing with this pick is going wide receiver. And we talked about a wide receiver run. They did bring back Brandon Cooks. They have Nico Collins, and Brevin Jordan could be decent at tight end. So I think for the fact that they did bring back Brandon Cooks said, I want to stay in Houston. I want to play with Davis Mills. I'm on board with defensive line for the Texans. And Jordan Davis, it's fine. You kind of sniped me, Thor, but go ahead and have it, damn it.
All right. Jordan Davis.
I'm sorry.
Well, Jordan Davis getting the pick from, or going to the Houston Texans. The pick would have been the Cleveland Browns pick at that point. Now we have the Ravens at number 14, Ray. I mean, this probably would have been a good spot for Jordan Davis, I would think anyway. Yeah. But there's a name that you've brought up over and over and over. And, it was too high. It was too high. It was too high. Are the Ravens going to go to the edge?
The Ravens need a lot. They need edge. They need defensive back help. We saw Jamar Chase just absolutely annihilate them every time it seemed like they played. But I think what they need more than anything, especially with this with the running backs, and Lamar Jackson got hit last year. I'm going to get a little spicy here, and I think they're going to go offensive line. And I think they're going to go interior offensive line. And one of the fast risers, I mean, just an absolute force at the Senior Bowl was Zion Johnson, the interior offensive line at Boston College. While I don't know if he's the 14th best player in this draft, well, I can say I don't believe he is the 14th best player in this draft. I do think this makes a lot of sense for the Ravens. You know, don't forget Ronnie Stanley potentially coming back, Jawan James, the running backs. You get an offensive lineman like Zion Johnson, who played over 1,100 snaps taking over for Bozeman, who had over 1,100 snaps at center, but he went to Carolina in free agency. I think Zion Johnson makes a lot of sense for the Ravens. They need interior offensive line help in the worst way.
Yeah, do you try to protect your quarterback, Thor, coming off an MVP season now? What is it, 2 years removed, 3 years removed from that? And really making sure that he can stay healthy, giving him more time in the pocket, that he doesn't need to go around and try to sustain that health throughout the course of the entire season, allow him to throw downfield, run some misdirection. Does offensive line make sense for the Ravens?
It sure does. Yeah. I mean, after losing Bozeman, when last year you gave up a franchise record number of sacks, and then also you're a run dominant team as well. It makes a lot of sense. Right now, I think their starting projected center is Tristan Colin Castillo. I mean, they got to figure something out there after losing Bozeman. For me here, though, I think that they could talk themselves into there will be that center in round 2. And so Jermaine Johnson was the guy that I had in my mock draft. I can see a lot of scenarios where he falls down here to 14. The Ravens, they always seem to get guys that drop to them that are projected higher at positions of need. Edge is their other enormous need outside of center. So I'm going to go with Jermaine Johnson under the idea that in round 2, they can try to plug that interior hole on the offensive line.
Ray, I'm going to go with you because I like off the board picks. You know me. That'll be a nice one that you can hang your hat on when Zion Johnson goes number 14 overall to the Baltimore Ravens. And then I will take credit for that as well because I'm sitting here. And if it doesn't happen, I'll pretend like it didn't happen because that's how I roll. Number 15, Philadelphia Eagles pick from the Miami Dolphins. Thor, this pick is yours. Receiver? Again in the first round, maybe?
Well, I'm gonna bring his name up again. I think if Jermaine Johnson fell down here, at this point, the Eagles at 15, they probably just have to throw their hands up and be like, "We're going to take him." You see a lot of these mock drafts where Jermaine Johnson goes above them. People try to force Karlaftis to the Eagles in one of their 2 spots. It would be a much better scenario for them with Jermaine Johnson. He's much more projectable. Love the first step. We know he's a stout guy out there, and he's been adding pass rushing moves. Saw his game start to flower at Florida State, tested really well. I'm going to go with Jermaine Johnson to plug their edge hole. They have a bunch of other holes, but they have a bunch of other picks coming up.
I think I like that idea, Ray. What are you thinking?
Did you see how bad who's the defensive end that would jump off sides every damn play last year for Philadelphia is, and they brought him back too. I mean, is it Brandon? Not was it Graham or the other guy? They need an edge. I love this. And here's the thing: Philadelphia picks in 3 picks. Jermaine Johnson, if they pass on him, he wouldn't be there at 18. This is, I think Eagles fans would just run naked through the streets if Jermaine Johnson fell to them at 15, because the reality is I don't think he's going to fall this far. I don't think he's going to fall this far. So for the sake of this exercise, this would be a home run pick for Philadelphia. And it was Derek Barnett. That's the guy that continues to jump off sides for damn Philadelphia. They need an upgrade on the line. So I love it.
Well, I mean, if they don't get the upgrade on the line, maybe they can hire a coach to teach him not to go offside. Maybe that could be helpful too and save some money at the position.
Don't count on it. It's Philadelphia.
The Saints pick at number 16. We talked earlier about if the quarterbacks didn't go early, that this would be a perfect spot for Malik Willis or even Kenny Pickett. But, Ray, do you think that they still go quarterback with this pick? Because that's the tea leaves that I am reading from the Saints. Regardless of who the quarterback was during the offseason that came up, the Saints were very interested in acquiring that quarterback. Didn't happen for them. So now it's either Jameis, it's Taysom Hill, trying that out again, or do you go to a rookie?
Yeah, I think they're not. I don't think they're going to take quarterback here. I think that would be a mistake at this point in the draft. You would be looking at Corral or Sam Howell or Desmond Ridder here at 16. That Terran Armstead's not walking. He's not going to play for them. He's not coming back. They need in this division with Tampa Bay. With Brian Burns in Carolina, they've got to protect whomever's back there, which is going to be Jameis Winston, Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas coming back. I think at this point, I'm comfortable with Charles Cross here to New Orleans. A gap for me between Icky and Evan Neal, but at 16, I think Charles Cross would make sense for New Orleans, and had Thor not taken Jermaine Johnson, I would have plugged him in at 16.
Yeah, Thor, with Jermaine Johnson falling down, that seemed to be the big name that was falling down outside of Cross, depending on which way these teams wanted to go. Does this make a lot of sense considering the Saints still have another pick in a few picks' time?
It does. I see. Now, I tend to think that the Saints are going to take a quarterback in the first round, but in this scenario where the teams, but between your pick now and then the next one, it's you got the Chargers and then you got the Eagles. They're not going to take a quarterback. So why would you take one here? Take a guy that might go in the next couple spots. And by the way, if they don't take Charles Cross here, he's going to the next pick. He's going to be the next pick. He's going to be the Chargers pick. And they know that. They know that the Chargers are sitting dead right on offensive tackles. So if it came down here like this, I think that would absolutely make sense to take a guy that some people project to be higher. Charles Cross makes a ton of sense. Let's do him.
If the draft broke down like this, but Jermaine Johnson wasn't available for the Eagles, would that be a nice trade up spot for the Chargers to the Eagles to go grab an offensive lineman and try to box out the Saints?
1,000%. It would be like the reverse of the Devonta Smith trade, right? Just hopping up a couple to steal them. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go to the Los Angeles Chargers. They pick at number 17. It just seems like no matter who they select here, Thor, it's going to be just an improvement solidifying their depth, because it seems like they're pretty solid across the board at almost every position. Like, they could go another wide receiver. They could go offensive lineman to help bolster those units. Those would probably be the two weakest on the field for them at the moment. I'm ambivalent of what to do here with this, because it feels like a luxury pick, as crazy as that sounds, for a team that's like good but not great. That can one guy really swing your fortunes that much right now?
Yeah, they're sort of like on the Bengals trajectory, right? Although they're a bit ahead of where we would have perceived the Bengals to be at that point, coming into the season or whatever. But they've done a really good job of plugging most of the holes on their team, and really building up the talent while acquiring that franchise quarterback. But like the Bengals, the one weakness that they still have is the offensive line. I think they absolutely need one immediate starter there, and they might even need two, depending on the way that they see it at right tackle and right guard. They would have loved for Cross to fall here. He gets popped one spot ahead of him. I think a guy that could make a lot of sense is Trevor Penning from Northern Iowa. I comp him to a bigger Kyle Turley. It's about the same, athletic profile. He's 3 inches taller and 30 pounds more. He's a guy that watches Saw on his iPhone before games, but he also watches Saw with his mom. Was a revelation at the combine that was kind of weird. He's an interesting fella, but not a guy you want to be stuck with in a dark alleyway. I'm going to take Trevor Penning.
Trevor Penning, Ray, does that make sense that the Chargers would go offensive lineman to you?
Makes a ton of sense. I know everybody wants to say wide receiver for fantasy purposes. They just want to see every damn wide receiver in LA. But this is absolutely a team need. This is a great fit. And for those of you who don't remember Kyle Turley, I'll just say nasty, nasty, nasty. And that's what Trevor Penning is. You look up at his highlights. When you talk about a finisher, somebody that is going to give you everything in every rep, you pair him with the first round pick of some people thought should have been in conversation for rookie of the year at offensive line last year. Justin Herbert's going to be feeling great with that selection of Penning.
Well, he'll have plenty of time to throw to the ghost of Mike Williams while he is out after a game and a half dealing with some sort of injury from trying to make some sort of unbelievable catch where he falls on his head because, hey, it's the NFL. It's Mike Williams. This is going to happen every single year. They should at least try to do that thing where they draft all of the Mike Williams. They should just have them all on the Chargers and interchange them. You could have like big fat Mike Williams who played for USC. And then, I don't know, it would seem to be, you'd save some money in jersey costs. You wouldn't have to change the names. They could all wear the same numbers. Seems pretty logical to me if I was trying to be a cost-saving franchise like I know the Los Angeles Chargers are. Philly, Ray, is up at number 18. I know you're a Cowboys guy, but it's a lot of picks for the Eagles here. It got to be kind of scary, doesn't it?
Not with the next selection that they make. I wouldn't be scared at all, and actually I'd be quite happy, but I think they're going to do it, and I do think they're going to go wide receiver. They've already moved J.J. Arcega-Whiteside to tight end. They're not rolling out Devontae Smith and Quez Watkins or Jalen Reagor again. And I think at this spot, they're going to go Ohio State, and they're going to take Chris Olave. So I'm going to mock Chris Olave, wide receiver out of Ohio State, to Philadelphia. And as a Cowboys fan, I love it. Not terrified at all. Good luck, Philadelphia, with Olave.
Olave. Whenever I tried to look up his name, Thor, I was expecting to see an accent aigu over the last letter of the name, over that E. So it could be, because it just looks like olive. Like when you look at it, you need that accent in there, or else it's very confusing for someone who's now not familiar with all these pronunciations. It's not fair.
For sure. Yeah. And it's not fair to Eagles fans to have suffered through another season with Jalen Reagor on the outside. So they need to bump him back to the slot where he belongs, and then him and Quez Watkins, they could sort of fight it out for the slot. But the Eagles, man, if a team needs a boundary receiver, that is the team. And what's sort of beautiful for them here is qualitatively, there's a drop off after this. For me, Burke, and I think for a lot of people, Treylon Burks has fallen out of the top 4. So I think, we've talked about that 4 receiver top tier after, Olave gets taken. Now we're dropping off. They're a team that likes to look at the board and likes to look at tiers. I think they'll understand that Chris Olave is the pick.
All right, so we're going to go Chris Olave at number 18 to the Philadelphia Eagles. The Saints are now back on the clock. This pick is from the Eagles after their trade about 2 months ago. At this point, they've gone offensive lineman Charles Cross with their first pick. This probably would have been projected as an offensive lineman, Thor, had they not done that at pick 16, or they just doubled down here in case they like who else is on the board. Like, where are the peak positions left? Because you just said now there's a drop-off at wide receiver. We've kind of agreed that there's probably a drop-off at offensive line. What are the positions that still have those higher-tier players in them right now?
That are still available? Well, we haven't broken seal on linebacker yet, so that'd be one of them. The edge class is super stacked, so even though we've had 4 of them off the board, you still got 4 other ones at least that have a shot to get into the first round, or are at least in the discussion. Cornerback, I think as well, would be another position that people would say that about. We still got Stingley on the board, still have McDuffie on the board, still have Andrew Booth and Kyer Elam on the board. So I think that's where the talent is right now.
All right, well, Ray, what do you think that the Saints end up doing?
Oh, you're giving me this one, or did Thor make his pick? Who did Thor take?
Well, I'll go first. I'm going to take Matt Corral. I think I sort of. I
should have went first. Damn it! Take my guy.
Yeah, I sort of tipped this off a little bit earlier, but the Saints, for me, you don't make that trade that they made with the Eagles well in advance of the draft that just involves draft picks unless you're zeroing in on a quarterback. Now, the extra equity that they have in this class, they might use that to trade up if they have one specific target in mind. But if not, if they're stuck in these spots, Matt Corral is the last guy in this class that if he hits his ceiling, he's going to be a top 10 starter. So I'm going to kick it over to Ray because I want him to talk about his boy.
What? Hold on. Before you start, Ray, what are the chances they go Sam Howell here instead?
I think that's a possibility. I hope so. I think it's a possibility. I think Sam Howell gives them what they thought they were going to get out of Taysom Hill. He's a very, very good rusher, right? I agree with Thor. The inaccuracy issues, we can talk about who he lost and who he didn't. I think there's a chance they could take Sam Howell here, but the smart play, if it were between those two quarterbacks, would be Matt Corral.
All right, that's the pick. The pick is Matt Corral to the New Orleans Saints at number 19. The Steelers could have used a quarterback, but it doesn't seem like there's a bunch of Steelers left. We're going to roll with old Mitch Trubisky as the starting quarterback right now. So, Ray, this one is you up first with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Who you got?
Thor absolutely destroyed the draft plans. I am in panic mode, and I think if this happened, Pittsburgh too would be in panic mode, because I think one of the worst kept secrets is how much they love Malik Willis, but they don't have the firepower to go up and get him. I think they still like Matt Corral. He took a visit there. He's one of their top 30 visits. Thor, I'm not sure if Ritter's gone there yet, but I think we would get panic mode Pittsburgh at this point. Can I see them taking a linebacker? Derek Stingley, maybe. I kind of, just because of the talent, I feel like Stingley at 20 makes, like, it's just, you got to take the shot on that guy. But I'm going to piss Steelers fans off, and I'm going to take a quarterback, and it's not going to be Sam Howell. It's going to be Desmond Ridder here at Pittsburgh. Again, not forced to start right away. And you have to understand what is in the AFC North right now. You've got Deshaun Watson, Lamar Jackson, and Joe Burrow. You need somebody that has a shot to be dynamic, to compete in that division. So Desmond Ridder is going to be my pick here at 20 for Pittsburgh. Sorry, fans.
Everyone that I respect who does this kind of thing, Thor, I'll have Ridder as their number 2 guy, or at least number 3, like way better than Howell. How couldn't it be Ridder over Howell?
Yeah, if it falls this way, this is the worst case scenario for the Steelers, but I do think that the backup plan, if they're stuck here, it would be Ridder. Ray mentioned this. They've been all over the quarterbacks. I mean, they've been salivating over Malik Willis the entire process, but I think as a contingency plan, they've talked to or brought in every single other top one. So they're another team that is sort of projecting what they're going to do. And no team projects the position or the player that they're going to pick in advance of the draft like the Steelers. So I don't think they're playing three-dimensional chess here. I think they're sitting dead right on the quarterback. In my last mock draft, it was this exact same scenario where the top 3 guys were off the board. I took Desmond Ridder for the Steelers, and I'm going to agree with Ray on that one. But personally, I like Desmond Ridder more than Kenny Pickett for whatever that's worth.
All right, Desmond Ridder to the Pittsburgh Steelers at number 20. The Pats are up at 21. Can we just write them in, Thor, as trading back at this point?
We could, but we don't do any trades in this one, Pats. We gotta pick for them. But yeah, I mean, I think that they would certainly be potentially looking at that for sure. With the way that the board is right now, for me, I think this would be between Devin Lloyd and then one of those cornerbacks at the top. Let's give him Derek Stingley. I'll go that way. I do think Devin Lloyd is going to be very, very attractive to them. And he's a guy that, I'm sure Belichick will like, but maybe they'll talk themselves into Stingley, being a upside guy and roll the dice on him because they need a cornerback bad.
Ray, is this about as low as Stingley is projected to go and when anyone gets together and try to guess these picks?
Yeah, I think so. And the fact that they lost J.C. Jackson in free agency and they were unable to force one single punt versus the Buffalo Bills in that playoff matchup, they need secondary help. Now, I will say this, New England is always good for some obscure cornerback pick. And while Stingley seems to make the most sense, I wouldn't be surprised if they took McDuffie, the cornerback out of Washington here. I think Devin Lloyd would make sense, but they have got to be able to shore up that pass defense. And losing J.C. Jackson, I think they would have to go corner. But I would actually say, Thor, as much as I kind of still like Stingley, it seems like McDuffie would be more of their flavor for whatever reason. But if the pick were Stingley, I trust Belichick to get the most out of that kid than just about any other team in the NFL.
Off the board, you say? You're talking my language, Ray. You're talking my language. I know. I'm gonna go with Stingley. I've seen him as high as like 9th overall in some places. If he's sitting there at 21, yeah, I gotta think that he's gonna be. This is gonna be the one. This is gonna be the one that ruins our perfect mock draft. Just because I didn't want to take that chance. Went with the safe pick here, but I'm gonna side with Thor and go with Derek Stingley Jr., cornerback to the New England Patriots. The Packers from Vegas are up next. Here they need a receiver. Is that true, Ray?
No, they've got Alan Lazard and Randall Cobb, and they're solidified.
Hey,
yes,
they need Sammy Watkins. They have their number one.
They've got a guy. Well, they've got to find somebody. They need Watkins and Lazard to groom this young guy. Part of me wants to be spicy because I think it's going to happen. In my gut of guts, I think it's going to be a receiver that I personally don't think has any business going 22 overall, but I'm not going to say the name right now. I'm going to go with Treylon Burks, wide receiver out of Arkansas. Personally, it's not my best fit for Treylon Burks. But I do think that maybe Aaron Rodgers, he's going to have some say in this decision. Hey, man, get me this guy. I can get the ball in his hands, and he can do some things after the catch. So at 22, I am going to mock Treylon Burks to Green Bay.
Treylon Burks, Thor, to Green Bay. Are there other receivers who would be potentially in this mix with the way that our board has gone down so far?
Yeah, this wouldn't be the best scenario for Green Bay because I think the best scenario for them is one of those top 4 receivers drops down, maybe Olave, you pop them there. With the way that it is now, and you're sitting at 22 and then your other pick is 28, the way that I sort of see it is the next guys are in a tier, right? You have like Burks, Jahan Dotson, Christian Watson. If you want to toss George Pickens in there, Sky Moore in there. For me, those guys are more closely grouped after a teardrop. So I think the Packers, even though I do feel that they're going to take a wide receiver in the first round, I think they could be comfortable deferring to one of their other positions at 22 and then taking that receiver at 28. I'm going to give them Devin Lloyd from Utah. Devin Lloyd, he very well might go higher. He's the best linebacker in the class, at least to me. Diverse skill set and everything like that. I think they could take him here and then, be comfortable in getting their wide receiver 28.
Give me the name you didn't want to say, Ray.
I've got this weird feeling that they're going to take Christian Watson. I don't know why, but I've got a weird feeling that Christian Watson is going to be one of their selections. Maybe not at 22, but that's what I wanted to mock was Christian Watson 22 to Green Bay.
Are you good with passing on the receiver here, assuming that Green Bay might dip in again at number 28 and going with Devin Lloyd as the premier player at his position?
I would like that. That'd be fine with that.
Okay, make it so. Devin Lloyd to the Green Bay Packers. Up next, we got the Arizona Cardinals. Could they be in the market for a quarterback? Probably not. It sounds like they're going to make Kyler Murray play for them. Doubtful that he's going to go to baseball and piss away millions and millions and millions of dollars. They're probably pretty good from there. I don't know, really. I know what they need to do in terms of where they need to attack, but can they just draft good health for Kyler Murray, Ray? Could that be the number 24 pick? Hey, you're not going to bang up your knee and stop running after 4 games this year because you might need to do that if you need your team to be good this year.
They lost Christian Kirk. I'll say that. They lost Christian Kirk. Devontae Adams is not getting any DeAndre Hopkins, not Devontae Adams at Green Bay, but DeAndre Hopkins isn't getting any younger. They lost Christian Kirk, and I don't think Cliff Kingsbury has a clue how to utilize Rondale Moore. It's not throwing in the ball behind the line of scrimmage. And even if they try to use him downfield as a deep threat, I don't know, man. He's just a little guy out there. Love the tape, love the film. But I do think they need a lot, man. They need defensive line help. They need wide receiver help. But I think in a division where you're playing with the Rams, you've got to keep pace with those guys. The fear of what San Francisco can do, I think it would force Cliff Kingsbury and his air quotes genius to go back to the wide receiver pool. Treylon Burks is still on the board. Kyler Murray, I guess it would work with him. It's weird because you drafted a small version of Treylon Burks last year in the second round. So then they go back to the well again this year. I know they brought AJ Green back, but that receiving core is not good. It's a great name group, about 5, 6, 7 years ago, but I think they need a wideout. So I'm going to go back to Treylon Burks, and I'm going to keep saying his name until he gets drafted. I'm going Treylon Burks here to Arizona.
So, Thor, I think it's going to be a wide receiver or it's going to be a pass rusher. I think those are the 2 routes that they probably need to go, unless there is an elite corner that would still be out there that I think that obviously they could use, especially playing in that division. Although with Seattle and San Francisco, you don't want to just gear to the teams that you play in your division, but you know that they're probably going to be run-heavier teams than pass-happy teams, although they have some pretty devastating receivers if they ever wanted to use them. It's not just the Rams, who could have a formidable passing attack in the NFC West. So So are you good with Treylon Burks here? Christian Watson, Ray's guy, could he end up going here? Because you trade for DeAndre Hopkins, you draft Rondell Moore, and you have like the remnants of the 2014 Pro Bowl team as your wide receiver core. Hell, you might as well get Larry Fitzgerald back at this point. Is it just too much capital to be constantly spending on wide receivers?
Yeah, and I think I'm not sure that Burks is the best fit for them just because in college he was a manufactured touch guy like Rondale was. So, there's going to be some sort of cross-pollination of skill set there until you teach Burks just to be the boundary guy. He doesn't win downfield consistently enough for me yet. Arkansas had, a lot of his usage was within 10 yards. You mentioned the cornerback need. I do think there's a very good cornerback on the board. Trent McDuffie's my number 2 cornerback. The division that they're in and the pressing need there, I'm going to give the Cardinals Trent McDuffie.
I think I'm going to go there, Trent McDuffie, and side with Thor on this one, Ray, because I know I have to take your side on the next pick. And, it seems like you really like Burks, and maybe that this is a spot with like 180 wide receiver targets opening up for the Dallas Cowboys. Please, Ray, you can kick this one off because, it's your Dallas Cowboys. Tell us about the Dallas Cowboys and what they're going to do at number 24.
I tried so hard to get him off the board before 24. I tried so hard. I agree, Thor. McDuffie makes more sense for the card. I tried to finesse him in there because this would be a nightmare for Cowboys fans because Jerry Jones cannot help himself with Arkansas play. He can't help it. He truly cannot help himself. That would not be a wise pick. When you lose, Dallas's offensive line has been in shambles since they lost Travis Frederick. No Travis Frederick. Lyle Collins is gone. Connor Williams is gone. Tyron Smith he's still good when he's on the field, but he's never on the field. All they got is Zach Martin. Tyler Biotish was okay. Connor McGovern, not good. The pick that I would love to select for Dallas right here is Kenyon Green, the interior offensive lineman from Texas A&M. Him or Tyler Linderbaum, I would love it, right? If Treylon Burks is here, I would honestly legitimately say whatever you decide is the best position of need, it would be a 50-50 coin flip between that position and Treylon Burks from Arkansas. This is a problem for this mock. I am going to mock Kenyon Green, interior offensive lineman out of Texas A&M to Dallas, but it very well could be Treylon Burks.
Thor, does Ray have the right read on that, do you think?
I think he does. Yeah. You're going to have to lock Jerry Jones out of the draft room if Treylon Burks is here, but Ray hit on the other big need. They certainly need interior offensive linemen. I think in my mock, I might've given them Linderbaum, but I'm sorry, Ray, I'm going to go Treylon Burks here because I think Jerry might not be able to help himself.
I would agree with Thor on this one. I don't think that Jerry Jones can help himself in this circumstance. However, I said I was going to side with Ray, and I'm a man of my word on this one, and I don't want him leaving here in a bad mood. That's not fun. It's a mock draft. These are supposed to be fun. I don't want Ray out of here being like, man, this is going to happen. This is horrible. No, not in this mock draft on the Pat Mayo Experience. We're not going to go that way. What we're going to do, Ray, is go with you and go with Kenyon Green, interior offensive lineman to the Dallas Cowboys. Give Dak some protection. And you know what? Maybe one of these absolute jabronis that they drafted in last year's draft at wide receiver, maybe one of those guys could be good, right?
I hope so. I really am fearful that if it played out this way, I am terrified that it would probably be Treylon. But thank you, Pat, for giving us an offensive lineman. So happy to draft a big boy.
All right, so now we have the first possible chance, Thor, that a running back could go off the board because the Bills have been rumored about this for a while. I spoke about this with Emery Hunt a little bit when I did the prospect grade show. It's not that running backs shouldn't go in the first round, is that they've just become a disposable position by most NFL franchises. Very few have these bell cow bats. You're going to mix and match with 2 or 3 depending on whether it's a pass blocking situation, a pure run situation, or you have your hybrid guy that keeps teams off balance, the Patriot way, basically, in the backfield that will frustrate fantasy owners. However, it's pretty good when you actually see it on the field. The Bills could use a stud at running back. It seems like they could use an upgrade, not necessarily to any position, but it would be a luxury. It's a lot like the Chargers, but the very higher end of that for them right now. But the one thing that we got to talking through is, doesn't it actually kind of make sense to take running backs at the end of the first round if your team philosophy, franchise philosophy was, we are never going to waste a cent on giving a running back a second contract, no matter how good he is. We're going to lock this guy in for 5 years at a pretty cheap salary, hope that he's a stud, and move on. Is that a viable strategy? So you're not giving, I mean, look how good Christian McCaffrey was. Now they're in the hole because they paid Christian McCaffrey. Let's talk to Ray about Zeke. How's that turning out? Not great. And these guys are absolute studs when they came out. Just eventually, unless you're an outlier, you're going to hit that wall. 5 years seems to be enough at running back. Will the Bills, Thor, make that plunge at running back here?
They're the one team that could. I don't see any other team at the end of the first round taking that running back. But I do think at the top of the second, that's going to go bang, bang with Hall and Walker if they're still there. So if the Bills want to get one of those two guys, they're probably going to have to take one here or trade back into the second round. If quarterbacks have fallen down here, a different way than we had it going, there might be teams at the top of the second that want to trade up here. The other two needs that they have, it's at cornerback and wide receiver. I'm not sure if Treylon Burks is the best fit for Josh Allen, just in a vacuum. And then at corner right now, Andrew Booth, I think would probably be the pick if they went that way. But I'll shake things up and say Breece Hall. There's been a little bit of smoke that he could sneak into the back half of the first, and this is the one team it makes by far the most sense for.
What do you think, Ray? What are the Bills going to do?
Yeah, it makes sense, but I don't think they do it. I don't think they do it. I think they're comfortable with Josh Allen getting his goal line carries, moving the ball with his legs and with his arms. And I think in this draft, even if you miss out on the top guy, which is Breece Hall, there are other capable running backs that they can invest in much later that can do enough, right? Because the reason why Buffalo lost wasn't because they didn't have a running back. Devin Singletary was actually quite good down the playoff stretch. That's not why they lost. They need some defensive help. If it were me, Andrew Booth is the name that I wrote down, the cornerback out of Clemson. You get the LSU Trey White coming back off that ACL tear. You throw him into that secondary. I think that would be more of something that actually helps push them over the top. And an AFC division, AFC conference, it just continues to get better and better with these offensive pass catchers. So I would mock Booth there. I just don't see them taking a running back here at 25. To Thor's point, to your point, it makes the most sense. But I think Buffalo, they're doing things the right way. I think they'd be fine with grabbing Damian Pierce or Zamir White somewhere later in the second, third round.
It's insane to me to hear the phrase Buffalo is doing things the right way as a franchise and still be talking about the Buffalo Bills. That just has not been the case for the majority of the time that I've been alive, and they do seem like they're a somewhat smart franchise at this point. Why would you go Booth over someone like Kyler Gordon?
Well, I just think I really like how aggressive he is in the running game. And then his ball skills, man. When you watch Booth, his ability to adjust the ball in the air, played defensive back when I played defensive back in college, and I just marvel at his hip fluidity and how he tracks the ball in the air and how aggressive he is in run support. I think it just makes a good fit with the secondary that Buffalo already has in place. I think he'd be a plug-and-play corner from day one.
Sold. Andrew Booth Jr. to the Buffalo Bills at number 25. Number 26, the Titans, Ray, are up next. Take your pick. Who's good?
Yeah,
who's still available?
Yeah, they have a type. They like monsters. They like big. They like athletic. They like fast. They like these big guys.
Hold on. Don't forget Sean Bradley was in Monstar as well.
Well, he was big. Yeah, he does fit the mold. He was big. But I think they're going Treylon Burks. I think, losing Julio Jones, they tried to find somebody opposite of A.J. Brown. You just have two yak guys with A.J. Brown and Treylon Burks, and then you've got the king in the backfield, Derrick Henry. I think if Treylon Burks was here at 26, I do think that they would pull the trigger on him.
Do you think that would be the case here, Thor? Because you still have Green Bay. You still have the Chiefs, who are wide receiver needy. They could potentially trade up into one of these spots if Burks was truly the guy for them. But do you think Burks would go here to Tennessee if available?
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, every time I mock a linebacker to Tennessee in the first round, I get yelled at by the Tennessee fans. They say they're not going to do that. The other position that, that they, could be interested in, offensive line maybe, but we didn't have an obvious guy dropping down here that would fill one of their needs and their philosophies. So Treylon Burks, he is the obvious choice, I think, on the board right now.
I got to ask you, because you do multiple mock drafts for a very large publication for NBC. Does every fan of a team think you have it out for them, or you just don't know anything about their team? Like, is that the common thing? All 32 teams seem to think this about you?
It's the latter. They all think I'm stupid, except for the Green Bay fans and Chicago fans that know where I'm from. Then sometimes I'll get the, oh, you're just a Vikings homer, you hate us, and whatever. But yeah, that's what it is.
All right. Well, maybe you can figure out what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to do at number 27. They bring in Russell Gage, this guy Tom Brady. He's going to continue to play football. Probably an upgrade over, I was thinking it was going to be Blaine Gabbert, but there's obviously someone else there. That doesn't matter. Brady's back. They're going to do as much as possible to win at this moment. Who's the pick?
I think if George Karlaftis fell down here, I think that would make a lot of sense. Some people can argue that he doesn't have the ceiling as some of these other edge guys, but he is going to come in quick, I think, and contribute. He's a power edge who's more athletic than he gets credit for. He was a Feldman freak lister, and the tests he did, he acquitted himself pretty well. They're going to be looking for immediate help. They have a needed edge. I think Karlaftis would make a lot of sense if he fell here.
Ray, would this be the best player from Greece in history?
I think so. I don't know anybody else. Giannis, right? Does Giannis play football? I agree with the pick of Thor. I don't think he has the upside of those guys, but he just seems like somebody that's going to be a really solid player. And I'm not comping him to Ryan Kerrigan. Ryan Kerrigan made a couple of Pro Bowls in his career, but was just always really solid during his prime. I think it makes sense for Tampa Bay and what they need to do on that defensive side of the ball that's gotten old real quick.
Well, that's the thing. You don't necessarily need to shoot for the most upside on the defensive line. What you need is someone with a high floor that can contribute right away and spell some of these older guys that still have positive production in them, but probably can't play all 3 downs or may need to take a series off here and there, probably somewhat injury prone at this point of their careers as well. If you can find someone that you can plug in to that unit right away, they're in win now mode. They're not looking 3 years down the line. It's just every single time they're the guy who's drunk at a poker table on a Saturday night who kind of want to get out of there with either none of their money or all the money at the table. It's just blind all in every time. Let's just shoot for this, and hopefully we walk away with the championship. We're not too concerned about tomorrow. So I think that is going to be the pick for the Buccaneers. Ray, Packers are up. We cannot give them Treylon Burks. He is gone off this. So what wide receiver are they taking?
God, wouldn't it be something if they passed on wide receiver again? Wouldn't it be something? They're not going to do it. And I think the way that this played out, I don't believe Jahan Dotson would be the pick. I think it would be between Christian Watson and Sky Moore. And the reason why I'm going to lean Sky Moore is, what does Aaron Rodgers want? He wants his wide receivers to be exactly where they need to be when he wants them to be there. And I think Sky Moore gives him the best opportunity to do that right away, while Christian Watson has all this athletic just talent oozing and dripping from the profile. He's still an FCS wide receiver that really only did produce 1 year. And I don't think he walks in as day one as the guy. Neither do I think Sky Moore, but I think Sky Moore is a little more ready to go and a little more sort of on Aaron Rodgers' timeline, which could be a year, could be 2 years, could be 3 years. So I'm going to take Sky Moore, who seems to be a very fast riser right now, over George Pickens, over Jahan Dotson, and over Christian Watson.
So looking at Christian Watson, Thor, he's 22. If you go with Sky Moore, he's only 21. If we're going to nitpick at this point, so you can go with the athleticism of Christian Watson, although he does look good in those, what are they called now? The Edmonton Elks of the CFL or Green Bay Packers colors. So that'd be very familiar to him right away. But Sky Moore, Sky with 2 Ys, that's major league stuff. That's all pro type material with a spelling of a name. I think that's good enough for me. What do you think?
I'm going to go back to what Ray was initially sort of hinting at with the fit between Christian Watson and the Green Bay Packers, because Christian Watson is basically like a Packer receiver that has come out of the factory. Is 6'4", 210, runs, he's a deep ball guy, runs in the 4-3s, and then he blocks his butt off. I mean, that's what Green Bay is always looking for, a wide receiver. He's got some extra utility too, beyond that. But I think he would be a receiver that they're attracted to, and it would make sense here.
All right, I think that's the way that we're going to go because, he can just bring his college jersey with him. And, again, the Packers, not the highest profile franchise in terms of spending the monies unless it's on Aaron Rodgers, so they can have some savings that way. And you take Christian Watson out of the hands of the Kansas City Chiefs, who have 2 back-to-back picks right now. So with the one that they got from the Niners through Miami at number 29, Thor, what are we thinking that the Chiefs do? I got to think, we'll go back-to-back picks here because they have 2 in a row. Is receiver going to be one of these picks?
I think there's a decent shot, although the way that the board fell right now, you're going to have to like one of the, I'm not going to, one of the guys in a tier below it, whether Dotson, whether it's Sky Moore, whether it's George Pickens. This certainly is not an ideal scenario for Kansas City, but you sort of feel like they do have to take a wide receiver. I mean, like their whole offense, that's the foot it's led with is the passing game. You remember a couple of years ago when they ended up taking Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the story afterwards was because they had went and gone and consulted Pat Mahomes, and he said, I wanted Clyde. Well, you have to assume that he's going to want one of those 2 picks used on a wide receiver. I'll give him Jahan Dotson with one of them, and the other one I'm going to give him edge rushing help. And I think it would be between Boye Mafe and David Ojabo. I'm going to give him Boye Mafe just because of the ridiculous athleticism. And then he also is healthy right now. Ojabo coming off the torn Achilles.
All right, Ray, what do you think that the Chiefs do with their 2 picks?
I think that's it. I think they're going wide receiver with one of them, and Jahan Dotson would be the selection for me, in my opinion. I think it's Jahan Dotson and Mafe, the talent that he has off the edge. They did bring in Jordan Reed. They lost Tyrann Mathieu. I would just be interested if they would think about Brisker out of Penn State or Dax Hill from Michigan to sort of solidify that secondary again, thinking about their issues on defense, especially in the secondary. If they don't go Mafe there, I think Dax Hill or Brisker would be in play for Kansas City as well.
All right, so now we've thrown out way too many names at me. Who are we taking as the wide receiver between the 2 of us here? Who was it, Thor, that we're taking?
Jahan Dotson.
Jahan Dotson. Okay. We'll go that way with this one. And Ray, who are we taking with the second one?
Boye Mafe, the defensive end, edge rusher. I think that'd be a great get for them. And talk about George earlier to Arizona. This kid has got tremendous upside if he fires.
Okay. That's the way that we're going to shake that down. The Bengals, Thor, are up with the 31st pick. Where are they going to add to do you think – how good could they possibly be next year? It felt like a situation where they severely overachieved, got a lot of lucky breaks along the way. Or are they actually just like a premier franchise now because Burrow is that good?
I think they're on the ascension. I think, they sort of, were one step early on it, or they leveled up one step maybe above where we thought they were going to get last year. They're certainly ahead of their curve. I wouldn't expect them to be in the Super Bowl every single year because that, of course, that takes quality and then some luck, in the short sample that is the playoffs. But they're a legitimate contender. And also, earlier this offseason, they've already fixed or mostly fixed their biggest problematic area, which was their offensive line. I think because they brought in those 3 guys that they did to plug those spots alongside Jackson Carman and Jonah Williams, I think you could make the argument that they're now fine on offensive line. Maybe you can go to a different position here. Since they're now building for the future and they're seeing this thing out several years, I think this could be a spot for Ojabo. David Ojabo probably would have been a top 10 to 12 pick had he not torn his Achilles in the pre-draft workouts. He reminds me a lot of Brian Burns, as a sort of special sauce speed rusher off the edge. Burns went around that same range. But Ojabo, with that injury, with the beginning of his season, at least in jeopardy, maybe even the entire rookie one, he's going to be available for a discount. In this scenario, Cincinnati's going to get the 5th-year option on him. I'll go David Ojabo.
Do you think that's a situation that Cincinnati does find itself in, Ray, that they could potentially draft an injured Scottish-Nigerian American football linebacker from the Michigan Wolverines, according to his Wikipedia page?
I think that is a possibility. I agree with Thor. Ojabo would never have fallen this far had he not torn his Achilles tendon. I will just say that while I think they have addressed their offensive line needs, man, Tyler Linderbaum sitting here. I mean, you could plug him right in the middle immediately. And when your quarterback got hit more than any other damn quarterback in playoff history and still got to the Super Bowl, Linderbaum, I'm floored that he's even here at 31. You know, before the pre-draft process kicked off, I mean, he was interior O-lineman 1, and then his arms were a little bit shorter. He wasn't as heavy. I mean, if I'm Cincinnati, I say, you know what? The hell with it. We're drafting this kid and we're just revamping this offensive line for you, Joe. We're going to make sure you're comfortable. We know we're going to have to pay you $300 million here real soon. So let's just go ahead and solidify that. Keep Jonah Williams on the left. Let Lyle run the right and put Linderbaum right in the middle. I kind of still like Tyler Linderbaum here for Cincinnati.
All right, let's do it. Let's go. I mean, he was sacked more than any other quarterback in playoff history. So, yeah, let's continue to upgrade the offensive line because, I mean, we saw them do this last year where, you know, people were just like, hey, they need to get an offensive line to protect this guy. It's like, no, let's go get him a weapon, possibly the best weapon. Let's continue to give Joe Burrow as much protection, weapons to achieve his upside as possible. So I see them doing it again here, trying to continue to push that forward and grow this offense. That leaves one pick remaining. It was the Rams pick. It is now the Lions pick at number 32. Ray, what are the Lions doing? They already got Malik Willis. Are we going to give him a weapon now too?
Oh, man, they did get Malik Willis, so let's give him a weapon. And since Jahan Dotson and Christian Watson are off of the board, Thor, I don't know how you feel about it, but George Pickens, is he a first-round caliber guy? I don't think so. So I'm going to stay in the state of Michigan. Sky Moore played at Western Michigan. The Lions, Detroit is in Michigan. I think the last I checked my geography. So I'm going to go with Sky Moore here at 32 to the Detroit Lions.
So Pickens, Sky Moore, potential options for the Lions. Thor, what do you think that they do here with their second pick of the first round?
I think for sure. Yeah, they would be considering wide receiver here. Certainly a need spot for them. They need boundary receivers. The other thing they badly need is secondary, both, you know, cornerback and safety. And in their defensive scheme, they prioritize the safety play a little bit more. I'm going to go with the safety here and put you to one last decision today, Pat. You could either stay in state with Daxton Hill, or you could take Louis Sign from Georgia, who I think has been ascending up the board. He's been a late riser, tested very, very well. He grew on me the more I watch his film. I'm going to give him Louis Sign from Georgia.
All right, R.L. Stein, author of Goosebumps, to the Detroit Lions. I think that works out for me. And I do think that it's underrated. I mean, you get Amon-Ra St. Brown. He looks like he's not necessarily the real deal, but he's someone who could be very good at his position. And then you sign DJ Chark in the offseason as well, and you hope that back from injury, he can be that boundary receiver that you really need. Then you can try to plug and play with someone else on the outside as a number 3 option, because you still have Hutchinson, that maybe wide receiver is less of a need than you think. They're going to take someone at some point. I just don't know if it's going to be here. So this makes sense to try to address the defense a little bit more for the Detroit Lions. Guys, we flew through that. This is a new record.
We did it.
Did it? It was smooth. Thor, I thought you were going to go with our guy Jalen Petrie there. I know maybe a little bit higher, but I love Jalen Petrie, and he fits that need as well. But this was fun.
Yeah, and Petrie's a guy that I will have a first-round grade on. But just, you know, the way that the NFL sees it, I think the NFL might be higher on Sign. But, yeah, I love Jalen Petrie. We're same page on him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, since we saved about 2.5 hours here, minus some technical issues, do you guys have any draft props that I should be looking at? Because, I mean, I want to bet on this. I don't know what to bet on. Thor, you got anything for me?
I'd have to see the updated numbers. I'm sure I would have some. You got any?
Oh, yeah.
Any numbers around it?
Yeah. Well, what's one that you would want to look up to see what the number is?
Over under quarterbacks in round 1.
Okay, let's see here. That's number 1 pick. QB props. Second quarterback selected. Third quarterback selected. Desmond Ridder is minus 165 to be the third quarterback selected right now at DraftKings Sportsbook. And we had, I think we had Matt Corral going there. He's plus 450. So if our mock is correct, you know, we can get 4.5 times our money there. It's not bad.
No, it's not bad at all. Yeah. And I know one of them that I like is the under. I always get screwed up with the draft props, the vernacular on it, but the under on Malik Willis, because Malik Willis, the last time I seen his number is like 9.5. you have so many destinations that could take him up until, you got the Lions, you got the Panthers, you got the Falcons, and you got the Seahawks, plus any trade up opportunity. I think I love that pick. I think there's a really good chance that he goes, in that up there.
Well, looking at it, yeah. So I guess it would be the under at DraftKings Sportsbook rates. Under 10.5 is even money. You have to lay juice to go over 10.5.
Don't like that. When I'm looking right now, Pat, in total first round wide receivers drafted, you got to lay juice on it to make any money there. So I'd probably stay away from that one.
Well, what's the juice? What's the juice? How much is the juice? I'm willing to pay some juice.
Well, so over 6.5 wide receivers drafted in round one, minus 105.
Oh, that's not bad.
Not bad. Not mad. And here's the thing. I think that's I've got 7 wide receivers going in round one. So I would be taking the over on 6.5 wide receivers in round one.
Okay. So position totals. What do we got for running back on this one? Like, if we don't think do you think that a running back will end up going? Well, like, if it's not the Bills, are there any other team that would potentially do that? Or would a team trade to the Lions pick at 32 and be like, hey, we want to get that 5th year option on whoever and take a running back at that spot?
Minus 190 running backs at half a running back drafted. Just one guy. Minus 190. Just one guy. Under a half. Minus 190 for first round running backs.
I was going to say total first round quarterbacks is minus 250, but it's only 2.5. Like, Thor, that seems, minus 250 isn't great, but it does seem like it would all depend on what happens early at 2 and 6. If a quarterback goes at one of those two spots, it's got to be over 2.5, doesn't it?
Oh, 1,000%. Yeah. For me, I think the minimum amount of quarterbacks in the first round is 3. I don't see how it would only be 2. I really don't. And like I mentioned before, I think a lot of franchises are being cagey with this quarterback class. I think they're being cagey with Malik Willis. I think they're being cagey about Matt Corral. And you've started to see now in the past 3-4 days or so, now finally the steam is coming where some of these quotes are getting out from evaluators, for instance, about Malik Willis. Tom Pelissero had that recent report where an AFC GM said Malik Willis was the top guy in his entire board. There was another NFC offensive coordinator that said he preferred Malik Willis to Trey Lance and Justin Fields. So I think the perception of the quarterback, and Ray sort of started off the show with this, that they were going to be picked higher than people expected, and I would agree with that.
That will do it on the Pat Mayo Experience 2022 mock draft. You want the full cheat sheet and results? Those will be up on DKNation.com. Ray Garvin, they can watch you every single weekday morning live and try to interact with you at the same time. Tell everyone where they can find that and what else you're up to for not only draft season, but with the upcoming fantasy football season.
Yeah, you can find me on YouTube at RayGQ, live Wake Up with Ray G, me and my man Jay Rich. Have a good time talking props, talking fantasy football, just talking ball, talking sports, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can catch me over there. Just doing my thing, man. Just check me out, YouTube, RayGQ on Twitter. I appreciate it. Pat, Thor, everything that you do. Thank you for having me on for the 2nd year in a row. We got to make this an annual thing, man. I'm so happy. This is fun.
Hey, I love doing this. So the invitation has already been extended unless we get into some sort of fight over the next 12 months. Then that invitation will be revoked. I don't imagine that's going to happen, though. Thor, mock draft 4.0, 5.0, 6.0, 7.0 coming this week. Are we getting 4 new ones?
Yeah, 5.0. If we're not counting this one we just did is 5.0. But yeah, and it'll be my final one, of course, final 5.0. That one's coming in the next couple of days. My 500 player big board with 500 comps is coming on NBC Sports Edge as well. The Thor 500, my position rankings and stuff like that. So check it out on NBC Sports Edge. You can find me on Twitter at ThorKU. And also I want to say, check out Ray's show if you haven't. It's fabulous. I can tell you, I really enjoy it. So if you haven't seen Ray's show yet, go and check it out.
That's very magnanimous. Not only pumping your stuff, pumping Ray's stuff and doubling down on that as well. I completely agree with that as well. Everyone should check out Ray and Jordan's show every single morning. Does that insult you, Ray, if I say it's Ray and Jordan's show? Or are you like you're the star, Jordan's producing, he's on the show?
He's on now. We got some things changing come football season, but I appreciate the kind words. But it is Ray and Jordan's show. The show wouldn't be the same without Jay Rich. I can't do what I do without him. It's 100% his show as well.
Well, thank you all for being on the show. Thank you all for tuning in. Remember to sub to the Pat Mayo Experience audio podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and Spotify if that's more your jam. If not, sub to the YouTube channel. Help us out. See if you can get the first 5 picks correct down in the comment section and smash the like on the way out. I'm Pat Mayo. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo Experience! Experience!